my name is Jason
Wow.
JROCK Houston, and this is being done for Categories TV. We're speaking with Jlynn, also known as the Violution. Am I saying that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, I
Hi,
got
Jay.
as I was speaking to your producer Patrick, before we went on air, and he was telling me that, how I kind of discovered you was your Facebook page, like a lot of people. And I got to say, the first thing that I'm kind of discovering you within the last couple of weeks, the thing that hooked me was your single for Bad Horsie, which is, of course, a Steve Vai cover. And as I think sharing with your producer, I'm a huge Steve Vai fan, and I was a huge fan of that EP and that song when it first came out. Steve's, it was for his Alien Love Secrets EP. He's
Alien
wearing
Love
like this
Secret.
alien makeup. Just so let's talk a little bit about you, because I know that you play the Vitar, which is a combination of the violin and the guitar, and that's another thing that hooked me. I thought quite interesting.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. How we came about even to that name that we call it a Vitar, we were in the studio and Patrick made a comment, something like, "That's my favorite guitar player." And I'm like, I don't play the guitar, I play the violin. And it came out to Vitar. So we started calling it Vitar. And that's just how we talk about, because most violinists play in, I grew up playing classically trained. So
Yeah.
I have a very solid technique from 6. I learned Suzuki style, a lot of ear training. So that actually helps a lot with everything that I do on my violin. When I learn the guitar solos and everything, I transcribe note for note. And for me, it's easier rather than trying to remember it as I listen to it. I like to write it down because I'm learning it as I write it down.
Yeah.
So I transcribe down note for note, and then I start learning it and just find the patch for it. And it's a lot of fun. And it's something that really had me venture out of my zone of where I was used to. So it's fun to do it.
And I think that's like people like me, that's what's going to initially get them hooked, because, the only other two musicians that I can think even remotely doing what you did is years ago, and he's still touring the world. There was this guy, Mark Wood, that kind of like the hard rock kind of violin guy. And then the Gray
Yes.
Cat, which she kind of takes it to a different extreme. But and then there's you. There's not a whole lot of people doing it, which I think when you take like a guitar hero like Steve Vai and you cover one of his instrumental tunes, and he's just amazing with the guitar. I don't know if you've ever heard of any of the stuff he did with David Lee Roth, but there's if not, you need to look up the song Yankee Rose. And Steve has a way of making his guitar just kind of talk to you like the person's actually speaking. I've never heard anybody else but Steve do that.
Yeah, actually, I have a lot of material that I still need to listen to and dive into. The first time, I think Patrick, I may have overheard, he was saying, well, the first time I heard him playing Bad Horsie, the first thing that I heard was that opening riff, and I was like, oh my God, what is that? That's so sexy. I love it. I want to play it.
Yeah.
And I decided to cover the song before I even heard the entire thing. So then I'm learning the song and the solo comes on, and I'm like, what? Like, I have to cover that now. And I don't know if you saw any of the little, we have something that we've put up recently called Studio Shenanigans. And we literally put up we put up like, so like on back of one of these speakers, we had a little GoPro, and then we had a camera on another angle. And literally it's almost like a fly on the wall experience where you're in the room while we're recording, and we have our shenanigans because we work together a certain way. And I had a point talking about the studio shenanigans, but so you can see in the solo and everything about how I'm learning it and getting through each and every passage, which is so detailed and literally down to like, where do I place the wah on that note?
Yeah.
So it was really a huge undertaking, and Steve is so amazing, so virtuosic, and really happy about how it turned out. Really proud of myself, and
And so,
major
do you feel like you feel like you kind of put your own personality into the song and kind of made it your own? Because I kind of do. I mean, there's two types of ways to do a cover. A carbon copy, and then you other ways, which you kind of put your spin on it, and because depending on what song it is you're covering, you want to put a little bit, I think, of your feel and your influence into the song.
Yeah. Especially with the solo, there was a whole section before like the main solo starts. And I think I listened to a lot of stuff that Steve was doing, and he actually did this live version of Bad Horsie from the Harmony Hut, his his awesome studio. And he did it like live. I think I was actually awake when he did it. It was like 12 or 1 a.m. or something, where he just went live and he played Bad Horsie. And I heard something that he did, and then I extrapolated on it in what we did in our solo. So there's influence there as well. But it was, putting my own spin on it, definitely. But it's all Steve. It's Steve's.
Steve, yeah. I mean, and being that you're classically trained, I was interested. Most of your life, you just listen to classical music, or have you listened to everything, or were you kind of
it's
rock
interesting
music,
you asked me that, because when I was like young, growing up and learning everything that I was doing, which was mainly only classical. And I had one awesome aunt who was like, I remember because I'm from San Diego, and there was a radio station called 91X, and it was like the hard rock station. And she was like the crazy aunt. She was so cool. And I think she actually was like a radio DJ for 91X. And I just can see what she was so cool. And but back then it was like most of what I was just doing was listening to classical songs so that I could learn what I was working on in my craft at that time. But now it's like I don't even listen to classical, because everything that I listen to, my brain just like wants to understand everything of what it's doing. So where some people can listen to classical to relax or just to like chill out, I can't put it on because my brain just wants to listen to it and tunes everybody else out. And like literally, if I'm listening to music, it's like you don't exist.
So is this the first time you've actually recorded a song that kind of has origins in rock music? I was just curious. The reason I'm asking, another famous guitar player sadly died tragically young, Randy Rhoads. A lot of people don't realize he was also classically trained, and he's one of these guys that I guess was able to play anything. But I was kind of so when you do a song like Bad Horsie and you're first exposed to that, it's almost like kind of like okay, get to go play on the playground, do something different, I would imagine.
Yeah. So like in that second half of the solo, I think I was trying to count it, and I just literally went over this with we were listening to some of the studio stuff that we were talking about, and I'm like, I think Patrick was asking me, is it 30-second notes? And I was like, no, it's more like 7 tuplets or like 9 tuplets, something like that. And then I went through and I played what it was like an arpeggiated thing, but it was like an off meter thing. It wasn't like 4 or 8 or whatever. It was a little different, an odd meter. So 9/8, I think is what it was. But yeah, I used all of everything that I learned classically in order to do what I do on my Vitar. And I'm still learning like all of the things that are what guitar players do, how to approach that on my instrument, because they're not the same techniques. Like palm muting, I can't palm mute with my bow hand, so I have to do something with my left hand as I'm playing. And then like some other things like I didn't even know what the term pinch harmonic was, but I heard it and I was able to emulate it without even knowing what it was.
And see, what I think is cool about what you're doing too, besides liking the song and everything, I think it's cool because typically when people think of, especially people that are into like hard rock and metal like me, might think classical music, it's boring or whatever. But you're putting a twist on it, and it makes it kind of fun for people who might not otherwise check it out. Hey, there's something to this classical music or this violin stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun. And also like I remember it was my grandmother, Grandma Sally. She was like, there are some like hard rock tunes or things that she would like never listen to, but when she listens to my version, it's like it's acceptable.
Yeah.
Or if like there's screamo music and I'm playing on the violin instead of like the then it works better.
So the Vitar, as you call it, is that an instrument you kind of created, or I've never heard about it before, so I was curious.
So it's our made up, or like we came up with the term.
Yeah.
And it's a concept as well as potentially something else, but it doesn't right now. It's like I use that term when I talk about
Well, it makes sense. It
it's
tells people kind of
like how I play my
how you
violin.
play your instrument. It kind of tells people what. Now, my question, reason I'm asking is, I was wondering if this is something you thought about trademarking, because again, first of a kind, something you should strongly consider.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, we've talked about it, I think, since 2017, right, Patrick?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Have you ever played any orchestras? Or let's talk about some of your live performances. Like now that the single's been released, will you be doing live shows and that to promote it?
yeah. So Violution, we just actually did a stint with Journey when they were here at Resorts World. So they had, I think it was 2 weekends that we did some amazing shows with them, a full orchestra, so symphony orchestra. Um, and we had a full string section as well as winds and brass.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to play with them. And like the entire show was with orchestra, symphony orchestra. So that was really special.
And I love what you're doing too, because like I said, I love anytime you take something different and like combine it with rock music. I mean, you even look at something like when Anthrax got together with Public Enemy, the two worlds, metal and rap collide. And that's kind of what people don't realize. If you go back and even Deep Purple, like in the 70s, they did an album where they recorded an album with an orchestra, at the Royal Albert Hall. So
yeah, very
you
cool.
guys aren't the first to do this, but it's I'm glad you're doing it because it's quite unique, and you're one of the few people doing it. It's not so I think that's why you stand out. I was curious now, besides the single, if people want to get like physical CDs, can they, or is it just on YouTube?
So currently we have a physical EP that's also it has a DVD as well. So it's a CD and a DVD. And it has 5 tracks on it. It starts with Toxicity, which I don't know if you remember this or if you had seen it, but geez, how long ago was it now? I feel like it was 2009.
Okay.
Myself and another violinist and Maytal Cohen on drums. We made this video, and it was supposed to be a submission for America's Got Talent, which that experience leaves a lot to be desired. But we ended up throwing the video on YouTube. Yeah. And this was when YouTube was not like what it is today now with social media. It was like if something goes viral back then, it was like, like so amazing. So it went viral there. And that's actually what led me to do the whole Violution thing is that
now Violution, is that you? Is it, or do you have other musicians that kind of make up a band, or what exactly is Violution?
Yeah, so Violution is a band, and we were talking about how I'm taking the violin and taking the role of the guitar. So with Violution, the violins take the role of the guitar, and actually there's no vocals either. So it's all instrumental. So you've got lead Vitar and rhythm Vitars, bass and drums.
Wow. So would you consider what you do rock oriented? Would you consider it classical, or I would kind of say a little bit of both?
Definitely rock. So it's like I've got my foundation in classical, and so it brings that kind of like melding of the two together, but it's more, I want to say, like rock and metal. And going back, I know I didn't finish talking about the EP. There's 5 tracks on it, and we have it in our store online. So theviolution.com and in the shop there. But we are, and this is your exclusive because we haven't mentioned it yet, but we're going to be coming out with a new album, which has both originals. Actually, I don't think we have totally decided on it yet, but it may be originals. It can also just be covers, or it might be a melding of the two. So we're really excited because there's a lot of unreleased material that we've been sitting on, and it's ready to go. So
it's a rock-oriented act based in classical music. I was kind of curious if you were to cover certain artists, do you think they'd necessarily be like in the rock genre, or could it be all kind of wide open?
Yeah, it could be wide open because I don't want to feel like we're pigeonholed into just one thing. definitely doing rock, hard rock, metal.
Yeah.
We have classic rock. Yeah, we have a version of Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see
And
that. Yeah.
depending on what you've seen maybe on Facebook, I do a lot of guitar solos from all over. And I did do Randy Rhoads, Crazy Train, and Mr. Crowley.
Wow.
So,
Well,
and it was crazy. It's the first time I heard Mr. Crowley, and it was just like mind blowing how amazing his solo was. And I was like, I
I'm
gotta
thinking
do
that might have to do a lot with the fact that he's classically trained like you.
Yeah.
A lot of people,
He has a lot of elements of arpeggios and
yeah.
some things that are very classically like leaning towards, and I love it. I love what he does.
I mean,
What he does.
his family runs to this day runs a music school, somewhere in Hollywood. And I never been there, but I've heard other musicians talk about it. And so yeah, and then I've even heard people talk about Ozzy Osbourne over years, where I've heard Ozzy say even himself that Randy Rhoads was like the first person really to teach him to how to write a real song, because like even when he was in Black Sabbath, the bass player Geezer Butler, he wrote all the lyrics. And it's an Ozzy solo band. I don't know if you followed his career, but the guitar players and the bass player, they're all great songwriters. He surrounds himself with very talented, writers and stuff. So that's another kind of backstory to who Randy Rhoads was. Yeah.
Yeah, and congrats to Ozzy for winning the Grammy.
Yeah, finally. I was just thinking last night, kind of overdue. I guess we shouldn't complain. At least he got it. But kind of at the end of his career, when he's announced he's no longer going to tour and maybe his
Yes,
final album.
exactly.
So I guess it's just due.
Yeah, totally. Good for him.
And yeah, I'd love to have you back, and when the new album does come out. And what is, I mean, I guess it's all fun. I mean, on one hand, you must really get in the creative mode when you create your original music. And like you say, we're kind of determining if it's going to be a combination of covers or, or original stuff. And both can be fun because, like even with Bad Horsie, you're putting your spin on it, and you're bringing kind of a classical rock swing to these covers that you're going to be doing, and people I think are going to get off on it because it's so different.
Yeah. The thought in my head at the beginning was, okay, so what people are familiar with is what they resonate with more at first, and so I wanted people to grab people's attention that way. So I thought, okay, I start with covers, and then they can see what I'm doing, and then I can ease out with my original music, and
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's a smart move because, like you said, even if somebody comes to see you play in concert and you're playing Mr. Crowley or something like that, a lot of the diehard hard rock fans are going to know that. And oh, she's pretty cool, but she's good. Oh, she's got a CD here. We should check this out.
Yeah.
And so, do you have a target date for the full length, or like maybe towards spring or summer?
Probably spring. I want to say sooner rather than later. We're just itching to get the music out. So fingers crossed you'll see it soon.
And do you have a home studio where you work at, or
Say it again?
you have a home studio where you're working at?
Yes, you see it right here.
Yeah, okay. So that's
Yeah,
great.
this is where I do a lot of the covers that you see on Facebook. Yeah, actually we're in the middle of doing a session.
And then Violution, I was curious, is it like constant lineup, like same musicians, or do you have different musicians come on and play on different songs depending on what you need?
Well, it's myself. Obviously, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Patrick, actually, my producer, he's the one that played all of the drums on,
wow.
Except for a few in the beginning, Glenn Sobel from Alice Cooper, and the bass player, Marty O'Brien, who was with Lita Ford for a long time, and now he's with Daughtry. They were on the EP, and on the new album, there will be a track with Billy Sheehan on bass. So
wow.
Happy to have him in the mix too.
I just got the new Winery Dogs super album.
Yes, they're number one right now, topping the charts.
There you go. Yeah.
And yeah, so as far as the lineup, in the album itself,
yeah,
everything that you hear is actually me playing it. So there have been yes. So everything that you hear that is Vitar is me. Then drums is usually typically it's Patrick, and bass players, we kind of have a rotating chair. As far as the rhythm Vitars, that's also rotating.
And how about for when you play live? Do you have a rotating cast of players, or do you have a
Yes.
solid light? Okay, that's pretty cool. And how often do you play out? Like, I mean, I know people could probably go on the website and check out the tour dates, but like, do you play pretty much locally in the Los Angeles area, or what?
Actually, we're in Vegas right now, but LA was my home and Patrick's home for a long time. Um, and as far as the tour dates, we are hoping to have some of those up very soon.
Oh, wow, wow.
Yeah. I can't really say too much, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so, do you want to let people know where they can find you online if they want to check out what you're doing? Because I think they're going to dig
Yes,
it.
absolutely. Go to theviolution.com, and it's violution.com. And you can also look up Jlynn, which is just Jlynn. And I'm all over Facebook and Instagram. And oh yes, Violution is on TikTok, and we were so excited because, well, I'm excited because weren't on TikTok for very long, and we did a Master of Puppets cover of the solo, and it
Wow,
kind of
wow.
like blew up, which was awesome. So our TikTok numbers went up. So
Wow. Yeah. And so, I guess the last thing I want to ask you before I let you go is, let's talk about some of your influences, because I quite imagine that they're quite varied, you know?
yes, my influences,
That's fun.
definitely. I've when I was younger, a lot of female violinists were high up on my roster, and those were classical, obviously.
Yeah.
So Sophie Mutter and Midori, and then Vanessa May. When she came into the picture, it was like, oh my God, she's amazing.
Yeah.
I really loved that. Was my first inkling to like out of the box from
Yeah.
classical music, and then came Bond,
Oh,
and
wow.
Bond was like my dad is a huge fan of Bond in Europe. And then as far as like when I started venturing into electric violin and distortion and all that kind of stuff, I started to listen to a lot of like rock metal,
Yeah.
and but really like I want to say like the big guitar heroes started like being my influences, and it wasn't even like I was meaning to listen to
Yeah. Yeah.
them. I'd hear something and I'd be like, wow,
It's
what
that.
is that? What are you
Yeah.
doing? Yeah. So then I would just like listen to it for a long time. But one of my main ones right now, other than Steve Vai, is
Yeah.
John Petrucci,
Oh, wow.
because he is just so melodic with his solos. But obviously he's very progressive in his
Yeah.
playing. But I love what he's doing. And
Wow.
the first time I heard that the Spirit Carries On
Yeah.
solo, it's like, oh my God, what is this? I have to play it like right now. And I literally sat down and transcribed it. And I think I learned it in like 1 or 2 hours, and then made the
Oh, wow.
video.
And
And
so,
it was,
I was curious. So, would you say your parents are ones that kind of got you into, learning music, or did you have an interest all on your own?
so my mom thought that it would be a great way for me to get a scholarship to college, learning the violin. But actually, it wasn't me that was supposed to play violin. It was my older sister.
Wow.
We're 11 months apart, and she's the oldest. I'm the middle. And she was all set up to play violin, and then something happened where the professor didn't have enough students because it was group lessons. It was
Yeah.
like I was in second grade, she was in third grade. And then she lost interest because the guy was like, we don't have enough people. Sorry, we can't do it. So then he called back and he's like, we got enough people. Does she still want to do it? And she said, no, I don't want to do it. And then there's
So,
me in the
yeah.
background. I want to play.
Well, the final question: what was the point in your life when you kind of realized, okay, I love playing the violin, but I kind of want to do something a little more rock oriented?
So that's a great question. I was in college, and I literally was doing the track that everybody is set to go on, which is like being groomed for an orchestral job position in for violin. I went to USC, fight on Trojans,
Yeah, there you go.
and my teacher, a very wonderful teacher, Dr. Lyndon Taylor. He was, I guess, well, everybody at that time was being groomed for those like orchestral positions.
Of
And
course.
I started to take orchestra auditions. And I did the first one, and I remember I was mad at myself because I missed a shift or something.
Uh-huh.
And I got through the first excerpt. It was fantastic. I got to the second excerpt, and this was the LA Phil. Like
Oh,
my
wow,
first
wow.
audition was for the LA Phil, and I was on standby because I didn't have a master's degree yet. And that's
Wow.
the other thing. Like you want to be in an orchestra, you have to get at least a master's degree to be like properly considered for the job. So
Oh, wow.
I actually stayed to get a master's degree because I thought I wanted the
There you
orchestra
go.
job.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I took that audition. Then I took an audition for the San Diego Symphony. And I remember just not really like digging it and being like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I don't even really want to be in an orchestra. And
Wow.
then all of a sudden it was like my horizon started expanding. I went on this tour in Australia with an all-female band. And that was my first
Encounter, so to speak.
introduction to playing violin with pedals. So
Oh,
I had a distortion pedal, I had my wah pedal, and I had a volume pedal. And it was like this band that was taking classical pieces and putting the rock spin on them, and then
wow.
taking rock pieces and making them classical. So it was my first introduction to doing that. And when I got off that tour, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. This is
Wow,
what I
you
want to
found
do.
your calling.
Yeah.
Jlynn,
It was like,
yeah, I want to thank you for taking time talking today. I really enjoyed doing this. So, what I'd like to do now is I'm going to get my as a copy of the EP, and then I'm going to have you back so we can talk specifically about the EP. Okay.
okay, yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, and then this should be going up by next week. You take care now, and I'll be talking to you. Okay, once the interview gets posted. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank
Bye
you,
bye.
Jay. And I don't know if I said before, the usernames are Jlynn Violin and the Violution
Yes,
on
you did.
all of the social.
Okay, thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you,
We'll let people
Jay.
know. Bye bye.